If I were to get divorced today, I couldn't afford to keep my home. I think it's very important in a divorce, especially for a woman, that if you are a homeowner, even if you have to downsize, maybe move to a condo or something smaller, it's critical to do everything you can to keep that family home. If it means taking in a roommate, getting a second job, whatever it is you need to do. Because once you lose home ownership, it's really difficult to get it back.
Absolutely.
I had a client, she called me to list her house for sale. She had a 17-year-old son, and she was struggling every month just by about $100. And I literally begged her to put her 17-year-old son to get a job at McDonald's or something, just to make up for that shortfall. And she said, I can't do it. So she sold the home, and the last time I spoke with her was about 25 years ago, and she's still a renter.
We're in Southern California, and I'm in Pasadena, but you're not buying a home under 1 million, 1.2?
No.
Would you agree?
No, you're not. You're not.
Because sometimes rent can be more than the mortgage. Which
Sadly.
is is really scary.
It's very scary. How are
Right.
people ever going to afford paying that rent to save up for down payment? It's
Unbelievable. Welcome back to Legally Uncensored. I'm your host, Demetria Graves, and this season is all about the unfiltered truths behind relationships, especially what happens when they come undone. Today's topics: one of the biggest assets tied to divorce and one of the most emotionally charged decisions. What are we going to do with the house? Whether you're staying, selling, or splitting it down the middle, real estate plays a major role in both the legal and emotional journey of divorce. To help us break it down, I'm joined by Phyllis Harb, a seasoned Los Angeles-based real estate professional with years of experience guiding clients through complicated transitions, including divorce. Phyllis is known for her deep knowledge of the LA market and her client-first approach. You can learn more about her at harbandco.com, but today we're tapping into her expertise to help listeners understand how to make smart, informed, and fair real estate decisions during and after divorce. Hi, Phyllis.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming. So I gave a little bit about you. Can you tell us a little more?
Well, I've been selling real estate for about 30 years, and I think I've encountered just about every dilemma that you could expect in 30 years of selling real estate. The dynamics are always different. Relationships are always different. Decision makers are different. And I'm happy to be here.
Well, thank you. And Phyllis and I were talking a little bit, and we will get into what happens in divorce and real estate, but I think we would be remiss if we did not talk about the Eaton fires and the Palisade fires that have rocked our communities, I would say, to our core. That happened January 7th. It was a Tuesday. I don't think I will ever forget. And that is going to add another layer of complexity to what couples have to face in a divorce, right? So right now we're trying to rebuild communities. We are trying to help those impacted, and it's a lot, deal with the trauma. And now couples are going to have to start deciding if they're going to rebuild or if they're going to sell their land or deal with the dilemma if they don't agree on how to proceed.
I'm personally more concerned about Pasadena because there's not as much wealth.
Right.
And I want to make sure that that community is taken care of, in addition, of course, to the people in the Palisades. The problem in my mind is if you rebuild, you're never rebuilding what you have. What you have is gone, and you can't get it back. The community will never be the same. Pasadena was a community of really sweet character homes. Most of them were custom built one at a time, so they weren't rows of the same type of architecture. Each house was individual, and a lot of people lost everything they owned. And if any of you know anyone who was impacted by the fire, it's devastating.
Right.
They've lost everything.
Not only that, but a lot of those who own houses in Altadena, they've owned them for generation after generation after generation. So they aren't able to pass on what they saved for their children and their grandchildren and so forth. And I don't know how much we all know about this, but a lot of those houses were not insured. They did not have insurance. So the likelihood that a lot of people can rebuild is slim unless you have the resources to do so. So it's very devastating for our community. I can only imagine the devastation that one has to go through if divorce is added on top of that.
I'm wondering if more people will get divorced because of this stress.
Oh, of course.
And the decision-making process. Are we going to
Right.
rebuild? Are we going to sell? Are we going to start all over again? What are we going to do?
Right.
That's very emotional.
Oh, for
and
sure.
I'm sure people have very, very strong opinions.
Oh, they do. I have not seen it just yet, but it's still very, very early in the process. But my heart goes out, especially to Altadena, because I am born and raised in Pasadena. So I am really, really sad for those that have lost their homes, that are still trying to figure out what to do, who are displaced by this tragedy, really. And if one didn't lose their home completely, a lot of people are still displaced because of the damage.
Well, the other thing is there's a shortage of supply of rental housing, and so many of these people are moving out of the area.
Yes.
So not only have they lost their home, they've lost their community, they've lost the neighborhood, they've lost the doctors they've been going to,
Right.
the churches they've been going to.
Kids have lost their schools,
Yes.
having to, relocate and start a new school in the middle of the school year.
After the trauma of losing everything.
Right,
They're going to need a lot of emotional help.
right. So we
sad.
know the news has moved on, the news cycle has moved on, but the trauma still remains
Absolutely.
and will be here for years to come. But Altadena, we are with you. We love you. And Phyllis and I both said if there's anything that we can do, you can reach out to either one of us. I know there are many charities within the area that are doing their part to help those that are most impacted. So we just did not want to just keep this show about houses going without mentioning the impact that our community has experienced. So thank you, Phyllis.
I
for
appreciate
that.
you bringing it up too.
Thank you. So with that said, on top of what we discussed, selling a house or keeping a house is already a hard topic in a divorce.
It's a very difficult topic, and it varies. I was divorced about a little more than 30 years ago, and I was able to keep the family home. I had to work 2 jobs in order to do so, but remember that at that point in time, houses were in the low hundreds of thousands of dollars. My
Right.
home was 2-bedroom, 2-bath home, maybe worth $350,000. If I were to get divorced today, I couldn't afford to keep my home. So it's a different story. But I think it's very important in a divorce, especially for a woman, that if you are a homeowner, even if you have to downsize, maybe move to a condo or something smaller, I think it's critical to do everything you can to keep that family home. If it means taking in a roommate, getting a second job, whatever it is you need to do, because once you lose home ownership, it's really difficult to get it back.
Absolutely.
I had a client, one of my first clients in my career. She called me to list her house for sale. She had a 17-year-old son, and this was 30-some years ago. And she was struggling every month just by about $100. And I literally begged her to put her 17-year-old son to get a job at McDonald's or something, just to make up for that shortfall. And she said, I can't do it. So she sold the home, and the last time I spoke with her was about 25 years ago, and she's still a renter.
Right.
And it's sad because as a renter, you don't really have any security. You don't know when your landlord's going to say it's time for you to go.
Right. And I think we should add some context to this, right? Because we're in Southern California and I'm in Pasadena. I think the median, and you can speak to this more than I can, but you're not buying a home under 1 million, 1.2?
No.
Would you agree?
No, you're not. You're
Right.
not. I mean, a starter home, a very basic starter home that you really wouldn't even want to live in is $1 million.
Right.
But, there's still condominiums and townhomes.
Right.
But still, something nice that you would want to live in these neighborhoods, it's going to be $250,000.
Right. Right.
So once you lose that hold in real estate, it's very, very hard to get it back.
Right.
Especially in California, because
Right.
over time prices keep escalating. I mean, we have our highs, we have our lows. The interest rates go up, the interest rates go down, but historically prices are always going up,
Right.
as well as rents.
Right. Exactly. Because sometimes rent can be more than the mortgage, which
Sadly.
is which is really scary.
It's very scary. How are
Right.
people ever going to afford paying that rent to save up for down payment? It's
Unbelievable. So with that said, I'd like for people to be informed before they start the process so they can start to plan what the next chapter looks like. So everybody always wants to know what are their options around the house. And I always say it really depends on how the house was acquired and kind of where you are, right? So one, if you bought it during the marriage, then you're probably going to split it or someone's going to buy out the other party.
unless there's a quick claim deed.
Unless there's a
Sometimes-
quick claim deed. Even with that, if it's purchased during the marriage, it's presumptively community property. So that's probably the easiest way,
Right.
right? What happens a lot of times is one party might inherit the house, right? If they inherit the house and you're never added and there's no mortgage, you don't own it. And there are scenarios where they are added to the house and then,
Right, they're added to title.
right, they're added or they get a loan and they're added or whatever the situation. But if they never add you to the home, you have no interest in that home.
They have no rights.
No rights. So that is something you should talk to your spouse. If a house is inherited and you're going to live in it, what does that look like for you? Because at the end of the day, you won't have anything if there's not a discussion.
Unfortunately, it's usually women are the ones that lose in these situations, typically, which I see. I'm not saying men never lose, of course they do, but typically it's the woman, and sometimes because she leaves the finances and all of those details to her husband, and that's really sad. Be male or female, you have to know what the finances and the legalities are of your relationship. The checking accounts, the savings accounts, you have stocks, IRAs, and then again, the deed to the home, who's on it.
Right.
And sometimes you'll see that maybe your husband purchased the home and his parents are on title with him. So even if he adds you and the parents are still on title, maybe you only own a quarter of the home.
Right. Right. Which is scary. Or what I've seen is one party owns the house and there's always promises, baby, don't worry.
Right.
It's ours. You don't have to be on title.
Right.
We're going to share it. And I'm here to tell you, please don't fall for that.
Yeah, please.
Because there's nothing legal about baby, don't worry.
Right.
You can't take that
Everything has to
court.
be in writing.
Exactly. So I think it's very, very important that you know who was on the house, when the house was purchased, how it was acquired, because that is the starting point for how it's going to be untangled, if you may, once you go through the divorce process. And because we just talked about the cost here, what is the likelihood now that one spouse can buy out the other spouse in this market?
Well, there is a disparity of income between men and women, and that's just a fact.
Right.
So typically, if someone's going to be buying out, it would be the male. I don't know that I've ever come across a situation where there has been a buyout. Usually either the wife, the mother, remains in the home until the children are out of high school or 18, or they sell the home. I would assume if one was going to buy out the other, that there would be an appraiser involved.
Yep.
And maybe not even a real estate agent.
Right. So typically that is what happens. The house is appraised. Sometimes there's some discount for taxes and that sort of thing. And then they have to buy them out within whatever amount of time that is specified. But to your point, the question for me is always, can you afford it? Does it make sense in this day and age? I know we want them to keep the house. However, are you going to be house rich, right, and can't do anything else? So what does that look like?
Well, I think if there are options, maybe getting a roommate. I think if you can hold on to the house by any means reasonable, I think you should try that. And if you can't, then that's fine too. But try to buy something smaller, more modest, more affordable, and not give up home ownership. That's a big thing to give up.
I'm with you. What are some of the tax consequences you think people overlook because they're so focused on their divorce? What are some of the tax consequences?
Well, if you're under 55 and you sell your home, you're going to lose your tax basis. So if you've owned your home for 20 years and now you buy $1 million condo, your property taxes are going to be about $10,000 a year.
Yep.
So you may be downsizing, but you have to consider the property tax implication.
Yep. And a lot of people forget that part, especially
Well, there's so much
Right.
in a divorce, and there's so much emotion. And sometimes there's a lot of anger, a lot of resentment, that emotions take center stage, which is
Right.
unfortunate, but
Right.
you know, you can only control your emotions to the extent that you can control them.
Right.
But I'd say take a deep breath, think seriously, talk with your attorney, talk with a financial planner, and don't make any sudden moves or sudden decisions.
Right. And if you're taking notes, right? So where we are is one, know how the house is titled, how it's owned. Do you have any ownership interest in the house? Are there any reimbursements? Meaning, did you all pay down a mortgage during the house and kind of what that looks like? I don't want to go into the weeds on some of these things, but I think my point is you should know. Right? And then number two is consider all of the implications if you keep the house or if you sell the house. What are your tax exposures? I think it's important to talk to a tax advisors. Us attorneys might know some of the basics, but I think for your individual situation, I think it's very important to talk to a real estate agent and to a tax consultant so you know exactly how to cover yourself and your next steps.
That's a really good point, because you want to find out if capital gains is going to apply to you and if you're going to be paying taxes.
Tell them
on the
what
gain.
capital gains is.
Capital gains is a profit.
Yeah.
And for married people, if you sell a home and you make more than $500,000 profit, that's subject to tax. For a single person, if you sell a property, it's $250,000, you're excluded. So let's just, for even numbers, you sell a home for $1 million, you purchased it for $500,000, you have a $500,000 exclusion, so that's even, there are no taxes. But if you sold the home for $1.5 million, you would have capital gains tax on $500,000. And in California, the state tax is very expensive. So it's not just the federal tax. I'm not an accountant, but I've been told it's close to 50%, maybe 45% is close to the number for state and federal taxes. So that's a big chunk
Right.
on $500,000.
Right.
Or your portion of the
of the
$250,000.
of the 250. So again, you have to talk to the professionals, right? It's not as easy as, oh, let's sell it today.
No, it's not as easy as that.
And I'm gonna put 200, 500,000 in my bank account, because there are major implications of doing that, right? So from a real estate perspective, how can one get ready for the sale?
Emotionally or financially?
Both.
Well, financially, obviously, I think you need to talk to an attorney.
Right.
I had a woman I know, and she was married to a very famous man, and they got divorced, and she kept going into the escrow company, and she was signing quitclaim deeds. And what a quitclaim deed is you're deeding off ownership of the property. They had been married for maybe 10 years, had 2 children. So after the 5th property she signed off of, the escrow officer said, you know, what are you doing? You need to go see an attorney.
Right.
So she went to see an attorney, and to this date, she's getting $60,000 a month alimony.
Wow.
But she was giving everything away
Right.
because she thought that was fair. He was a breadwinner. He was the one making all this money.
Right.
But after being protected by an attorney.
Right.
So you can't make any decisions before you call an attorney. That's your first move. Call the attorney. Then your second move is talk to an accountant and find out financially. Then call me or a realtor.
Right.
But first you need the attorney.
Right.
Because you need to be protected. That's the most important thing.
Right. And sometimes what happens, there are decisions to sell a property before someone comes to me, and then they have all of these issues because, to your point, they didn't talk to someone
Right.
about a game plan, right? Because to me, it's all tied together. We're going to have a game plan for your children. We're going to have a game plan for the property. We're going to have a game plan for whatever the issues are that pertain to the divorce. And I think sometimes it's best not to sell right away, especially if you're not the one earning money. And if you don't have to, why do it? The other side might want to sell it right away, but that might not be in your best interest.
Exactly.
So I think it's very important, to your point, to talk to someone. But I always wondered, because I do the planning, you do the work. What does that look like? What is your experience working with those going through a divorce? And what advice would you give them? Although they're going through a very, very troubling time, what are the best practices to make sure they get the most out of their home and get through the process?
I think every situation is different. I've
Yeah.
had clients that won't talk to each other.
Right.
And that if I send an email, I have to send to each of them individually. And that's unfortunate, but that's the reality of the situation. There's so much animosity that, and it's usually just one person that wants it that way.
Right.
And in that situation, that's just the way it is. I've had where, both instances, it was the husband, where he wanted to come back to the house and get the items that were his,
Right.
but he wouldn't do it with the wife there.
Right.
And then I had to play referee, so the wife would go in the garage or in the house and mark things with the Post-it that he could take. And that's unfortunate when it happens that way.
Right.
If at all possible, and you can keep things as friendly as you can, things are going to be much smoother. And it's better for everyone. But in some instances, it just can't be done.
Right.
What happened maybe was so egregious that you just can't forgive that person, or that person won't forgive you.
Right. Have you ever had a situation where they were fighting so bad they ruined the sale?
One very close. I had a client whose husband left her, and she had 2 boys, and the court had ordered the sale. So she signed the listing agreement. The husband did not. So legally, I can list a property with just one signature. I saw the court order. He was ordered to sell. So we put the property on the market, and we got an offer, several offers. It was a time when multiple offers were common. Put the property in escrow and told the buyer and their agent that this may take a lot longer than you think, because he may have to go to court again to be forced to sell. So the buyer was very anxious. They locked in their interest rate. This was a time when interest rates were going up. And the husband would not sign the purchase agreement, even though it was court ordered. So we had to go back to court. Took another maybe 60, 90 days. The buyer had to pay an extra, I believe it was 2 points to keep their interest rates. And 2 points of $1 million is $20,000 to keep their interest rate. So I think that was a time when it was just, he was wanting to make life as miserable for her as possible. I don't know why, but he wanted to, and he did.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, the buyer got caught in the crosshairs. And the buyer of their home had to wait and got caught in the crosshairs.
Yeah, divorce can get really nasty.
Yes.
Right? And impact many people, right? But these are some of the things you have to be prepared for and plan for.
Yes, but it
Right.
doesn't always have to be nasty. Sometimes it's not. It just depends on the parties.
Right. And it also depends on how fast do you all want to move on with your lives, right?
Right,
You
some
can,
people can't.
Right. You can fight all day and pay me and do this back and forth dance, but at the end, you lose. And I don't think it makes a lot of sense to do that. And that's kind of been the purpose of this podcast, is to empower people to be informed of decisions before they even start this process.
Before they make them.
Right. Because with the house, at the end of the day, it's either going to be sold, somebody is going to buy out the other party, or whatever agreements that you come up with, right? There are some couples that agree that one of the parties will stay in the house with the children until they're 18 years old. That is not as common as it was when I started practicing. I won't tell you how many years ago, but that is an option. That way the kids are stable and can go to their schools and keep their routines. I think that's a very mature option, but financially sometimes it doesn't work out for some parties. But it's very important to know what's going to happen, or what an attorney can tell you what is likely to happen, and make some of those decisions. So Phyllis, what are some red flags that people should look out for, especially during this time when picking a real estate agent? Because I've seen a lot now where some agents are specializing in divorce sales. I get a lot of advertisement about that. Can you speak to that?
I think the most important thing is to obviously pick someone in the neighborhood and someone with experience. And I think experience, I'd say at least 10 years, because I've gone through different markets. I've gone through a high market, I've gone through a low market, and they're all different. But most importantly, I think you just need to be comfortable with the person. And you have to feel that they have your best interest at heart. And if you're not comfortable with them, it's a very close relationship. So sometimes I say just trust your instinct, trust your gut. That's important.
Right.
Because you're going to be working very closely together. And if you don't trust them, you can't feel comfortable in following their advice because
Right.
you don't know if it's
Legit.
really, legit.
Right. What about those that are holding themselves out now as divorce experts in selling property? I see a lot of that now.
I don't think there really is a divorce expert because every situation is different.
Yes.
It's not like a divorce attorney where the law is the law.
Right.
But every divorce situation I've seen is different.
Right. So a lot of clients go back and forth about staging the property, and that's very popular now. What are your thoughts on selling as is versus?
I don't believe in selling as is. I had a client whose husband insisted that the home be sold as is, and she had 2 teenage boys, and the house, the carpet was trashed, the house was trashed, and we couldn't do anything. And so I said, I understand it's going to be sold as is, but I'm going to pay to have it cleaned. It has to at least be professionally cleaned. And that's just cutting off your nose.
Right.
Because
right.
he's losing money, but he didn't care because he wanted to hurt her.
Right.
And there's a lot of that where the other party just wants to hurt the other one, and they don't care if it hurts them as long as they're hurting the other party.
So have you ever, or can you share with us a story or two about dealing with divorce couples?
I think it's important to try to be impartial, to not take sides, and to treat each party with respect and understand their particular needs. I'm not really here to listen to what he or she did to you. That's really not my place. And I think that should stay out of the equation because there's a lot of bitterness, but I
yes.
really shouldn't be involved in it because I need to be impartial.
And how do you deal with that if someone starts dumping in your lap what the other side did?
I just tell them I'm so sorry that happened to you, but I try to cut it short.
So what are 3 or 4 takeaways for anyone going through this? I know you did highlight that a lot of women sometimes lose out.
Well, you asked me about staging.
Right.
So I think my approach, if the client agrees, is before we spend money on staging or fluffing or anything like that, I like to do a pre-inspection to know what we're dealing with. And we don't know what we're dealing with. So you might paint a house and put pretty furniture in it, then the buyer comes with their inspector and finds out that the foundation's cracked and it's going to cost $40,000 to fix it up. So now all of a sudden this home that looks so pretty is now a fixer, even though you've staged it, painted it, made some cosmetic repairs, maybe changed the handles on the hardware on the the cabinets. I think start with that. Staging, yes, it helps sell a home.
Right.
But it depends. Sometimes you can stage with your own belongings. It's just a matter of keeping the house in show condition.
Right. Can you speak to the importance, I'm asking you this because this kind of happened to me, the importance about picking a good inspector?
Did you not pick a good inspector?
I did not.
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that.
Yeah, I did not. And I purchased my house about 5 years ago. So now all of a sudden, like the air conditioner needs to be replaced. The insulation in the attic needs to be replaced. Like things, if they were inspected correctly, I would have known.
Well, that's
that,
unfortunate.
Yeah.
Everything has an economic life.
Right.
So, roof will last so many years, everything. And a good inspector will tell you that the water heater is 28 years old and maybe the economic life is 30 years.
Right.
So you could expect that it's going to go out soon. That's what a good inspector will do. I would suggest asking, if you trust your realtor, ask your realtor. But in addition to that, I would ask people that have recently purchased a home, or maybe purchased a home 2 or 3 years ago, so the dust has settled.
Right.
And ask them, did you like your inspector? Would you recommend your inspector?
Right.
And then, of course, look online for reviews to see if maybe there's somebody disgruntled or several people disgruntled, not just one.
Right.
And I think that would be a start.
Right.
And then, too, a good inspector, he's going to recommend other inspections. If he looks at the chimney, he may say, you're going to want to have that checked, because a cracked chimney can cost easily $30,000.
Right. So I think what we've learned is a lot goes into this decision on what to do with the house.
Yes.
What your next steps are. I don't think the decision should be made lightly.
Not at all.
And don't make quick decisions because you're trying to get, so many people get into the divorce process and just want to finish things quickly.
And don't talk to your friends, talk to professionals.
Yes.
That's the most important thing.
Friends are there for support. They're
Exactly.
they're not there to give
Exactly.
you advice about your individual situation.
Exactly.
Because I think that is different for everybody. So when you have two parties that may be against one another, how do you introduce a fair listing price, and what do you do if there's a disagreement about your recommendation?
Oftentimes in a divorce, the attorney will recommend that the husband picks 3 realtors and the wife picks 3 realtors, and then they decide on one of them together. As far as negotiating fairly, I think a lot of that is just really the law. It comes down to what the law says.
So what if you say, you know what, I think we should list this property at $525, and husband says, yeah, cool, but wife's like, no, I wanted $575.
Well, we have to come to an agreement.
Right.
We have to come to an agreement. I have never really had that big problem before, because it's usually one that wants out,
Yes.
and the one that wants out just wants out.
Right.
They don't want to dilly-dally and go back and forth over things. They
Right.
want out of the marriage
Right.
as quickly as possible.
Right. Have you ever had a situation where there's a counter and one wants to accept, one doesn't?
I've had situations more where the person in the home stalls. So the house is supposed to be sold, and it's been court ordered to be sold, but the one who's in the house doesn't want to leave the house. So they start interviewing realtors. After maybe 20 realtors being interviewed, the other spouse is like, wait, enough.
Right.
I've had that happen. I've had also happen in the situation where someone will say, well, I need to get the house ready. Okay. And then that person will start painting, not hiring a professional painter, but painting themselves, and taking forever. And it's just a stall tactic.
Right.
I see that quite a bit.
Right.
Because one party doesn't want to leave the home. So
Right.
they just stall as long as they can.
Is there a situation where you will recommend what needs to be repaired and some sort of-
Absolutely. So if we do a pre-inspection, which I like to do
Yes.
before we do anything, sometimes we'll come in and just, it depends on the inspection. I mean, if the air conditioning's shot, the roof is shot, there's no point in painting the house
Right.
inside, because what you're selling is not a shiny new penny.
Right. Right.
So it's different in each instance. But oftentimes on the inspection, it's a lot of little things, like the grout is cracked, and that can be easily repaired by a handyman, or that this cupboard sticks. So sometimes you just fix the little things, and then maybe the fact that the air conditioning is on its last legs isn't quite as big of a deal, because when you got your inspection, you saw a big long list of things that were wrong with the house.
Right.
So if you can eliminate that big long list and just have a few items, even if they're high ticket items, they
Right.
don't seem as overwhelming.
Right. Right. As you see, I can sit here, Phyllis, and ask you questions for days. So I want to first thank you for your knowledge and being here with us. And I hope everyone understands the importance of educating yourself about what's going to happen with probably your biggest asset in a divorce. So before we go, can you let everyone know how to find you?
Thank you. Thanks
You're
for
welcome.
having me. You can find me at HARB like boy, harbandco.com. I work for Coldwell Banker Hallmark Real Estate in La Cañada, California.
Thank you again, Phyllis Harb, for joining us today and sharing such valuable insights. If you're going through a divorce right now, or even just thinking about it, real estate can be one of the biggest puzzle pieces to figure out. But with the right information and support, it doesn't have to be overwhelming. Remember, every decision you make is a step toward a stronger, more stable future. If this episode helped you, please share it with a friend, subscribe, and leave us a review. I am Demetria Graves, and until next time, stay empowered, stay informed, and stay uncensored. Thank you.